Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the E.N.G Media Podcast. We have a very exciting guest, Chuck with PRSONAS. For those of you just joining the podcast, I am Christian Gannon, the co-founder of E.N.G Media, and we specialize in helping software and tech companies scale their revenue. If you want to learn how to take your software or tech business to the next level, make sure to stick around. So let's get right into it. I understand PRSONAS is redefining how organizations use AI to turn live interactions into real-world outcomes across events, healthcare, and customer service, and a multitude of other places. Powered by its personality engine and DXP Personas deploys lifelike digital avatars that engage in real time, capturing interest, delivering information, and automating follow-up across channels. Whether it's converting booth conversions to meetings, guiding hospital patients through check-in and discharge, or replacing static kiosks with touchless multilingual AI interfaces, Personas enhances staff productivity, ensures consistent messaging, and improves accessibility, including support for over 150 languages and ASL. It's a smarter, faster, more human way to connect with customers, patients, and partners alike. Can you share more about your business, the services you offer, and your role within it?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate you having me. Looking forward to this conversation. In a general nutshell, of course, AI is all the buzz all around. And we set up and we kind of saw AI coming. I've been in a pretty varied career history from using AI way back before even people knew how to tongue-in-cheek spell AI, which was 1980s and earlier. I used to do military simulation work, and we did early flavors of artificial intelligence. And then I got into game development, as we all know from gamers. When I was running the Madden franchise and the NCAA franchises for esports, you had, 52 AI characters running around the field, you had to teach them how to play football. So AI is not as new as people think. Now, the advancements in the ability for it to simulate how we as humans communicate has been accelerated exponentially. So what our real goal, we set back in, I'll say 2013 was our first commercial deployment of an AI avatar. So this sector within the human communications has actually been around a lot longer than people think as well. Everybody's just getting attention. So what we're learning and what we've learned over the decades of doing this work is that at the end of the day, in order to really, for enterprises to be able to take advantage of all these AI, they tended to have to hire highly specialists or do a lot of training, recurrent training, onboarding to teach people how to use these ever-growing complex systems. And the complexity of today's systems are just off the charts. So what we're really kind of promoting out there, I shouldn't say kind of directly promoting out there, is well, what have we of humans been doing for millions of years? We've been communicating the way you and I are communicating now. You're shaking your head, yes. I'm halfway smiling. You see some hand gesturing and all. And we relate, and that's how humans communicate. So in a nutshell, you can summarize what we do is instead of spending so much time, money on onboarding and training and teaching people how to use this new technology, let's kind of flip the script a little. Let's teach the communication portion of that to our technology so our technology is communicating as we communicate as humans. If we can advance that as fast as the back end technologies are advancing, then your adoption, there's that weird stat that everybody doesn't really believe and it's overquoted, and who really knows if it's true or not. This says 70% of enterprise software gets sold and within the first 12 to 18 months, it's on the shelf gathering dust. So it's the adoption of these enterprise technologies that are struggling. So if we can break down that communication barrier, teach our technology to communicate with the humans, whether it's customer facing or employee facing, and we now have AI that can communicate as we communicate as humans, you've now broken down that adoption curve. You've broken down the training, you've broken down the recurrent training, and now the AI has learned to speak, talk, and communicate with the users of that technology. And the word I use is invisible. Then the back-end systems that are so capable now, the agentic AIs, the AGIs, now they become usable for almost anybody. And that's really what we're bringing to is the power of adoption and usability for these complex technologies. A little long-winded, but hopefully it relayed the intent behind the technology.
Of course, and thank you so much for sharing. And that kind of leads into my next question. I know you touched a little bit on it in your answer as well, but what kind of trends are you seeing right now in conversational AI or digital experience platforms as a whole? Is there really anything out there that you've seen kind of break some waves or make some motion, I guess?
There is, and it's a little bit of a soapbox, and everybody's going to go, "I've never heard of personas," but everybody's heard of NVIDIA, everybody's heard of Soul Machines, everybody's heard of Unique, and you see some of these other, I'll call it hyper-realism. I use the term hyper-realism. You see people doing video morphing. You got VO3. You've got all these technologies that are creating videos, that are creating synthesized humans. But what we found that most people overlook is a single word, and that's trust. We have this inherent inability to trust something that's almost human but not quite human. I kind of jokingly call it, the technical term, or I shouldn't say technical, the industry term is uncanny valley. And so you go to Hollywood, you watch. I call it the creepy factor. That's the layman's term I use, and I equate it to, like, let's say you go to watch a new movie, and the villains or the horror stories or the freaky creatures, when your head spins a little farther than it's supposed to, or the eyes are a little too big, or the hair is a little off, or anything that we as humans have become instinctively in tune with, is what makes Christian Christian, what makes Chuck Chuck, and it's the hyper-realism. We're not symmetrical creatures. We're not perfect. Everything, I've got these little, I shouldn't point out my age spots, but I got my age spots. I've got these imperfections that, talking to me now, that I'm a real human. I'm not an AI. I'm not sitting over here programming. AI is good. Matter of fact, it's great. But when you talk about the human communication layer, this uncanny valley, this trust I keep talking about, gets broken. 70% of the people, probably 80%, are technically impressed with hyper-realistic avatars. And we used to do that. We were probably one of the first companies. We put hyper-realistic avatars out in 2013 because the technology was there. It really was. You had to create a bunch of extra graphics processing. Our kiosk probably cost $60,000 when we were doing it back then, just for the hardware. But you could render
Hmm.
photorealism back then. It's nothing new. We're just able to do it on cheaper platforms now. But what we found is that about 20 to 30% of our patrons, our users, whether they were enterprise users or public facing users, were a little standoffish. They were a little, you're replacing my job. You're really not human. You're almost human, but you're not human. You're really freaking me out a little. So part of our trend that I'm seeing is everybody is racing to try to, what I call, jump over the valley. That uncanny valley is when it gets too realistic, it becomes creepy. But at some point in time, it's going to be full realism, and your humans and your AI humans are going to be indistinguishable. Regardless, once you get past that valley and start going down that valley, I call it a breach of trust. In the
Of
healthcare
course.
world we play a lot in, it's created a sense of mistrust in the AI community. If you look at our characters, it's not that we can't render fully ray traced hyper realistic characters. Anybody with a NVIDIA RTX GPU can do that, but you've broken that trust. So the
Hmm.
trend I'm seeing, that I hope the market, quite honestly, is late to the game on, because we've kind of perfected it, is to take, I call it almost the Pixar approach. Matter of fact, I talked with the VP of Disney about it. He used to run a gaming company that was one of the first that would allow you to put your face into the game, and he ran into the same resistance. So the point is we need to create, the trend I think that should be coming is, how do we trust the AI? How do we trust the communication layer? And that's only going to happen with doing what we're doing. We're appealing to the cultural differences. We're appealing to, like with our more animated characters, we're appealing to the emotion and the empathy and the communication, the gesturing behind it. So our generative AI, we focus on doing generative AI with contextually aware gesturing. We focus on making sure the lip sync is correct. And we intentionally, I use the word dumb down, but we intentionally create more of an animated avatar, because people, especially the younger generation, relates more. That's something I learned very quickly in the gaming space. If you create a photorealistic Laura Croft for Tomb Raider, and then you
Hmm.
created a slightly exaggerated but more appealing animated Laura Croft, they'll outsell the photorealistic Laura Croft 10 to 1. So corporate America hasn't caught up with that engagement concept, the trust and engagement component. And I think that's a trend I'm seeing, is too much focus on hyperrealism and perfection, and less on breaking down what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to communicate as a human? What do we relay in our communications? And that's really where the market needs to focus, I think.
That's an awesome answer. And something I did want to touch on too is that there's been a lot of trends that I see across my space and with my network is some of these SDR tools that are coming out that are just voice, right? Like that I can give you a phone call and they're claiming it's just as good as a sales rep, right? But the sales rep says they take pauses, like just like I'm talking right now. I say I do all these different mannerisms, right, as a human that are part of my communication. And that's like something I wanted to talk about. Is that part of that too realistic or too perfect to where it's like I don't want to have a conversation with that person because I feel maybe uneducated or I feel like I'm not good enough to have a conversation, right? Is that part of that problem too, maybe as well?
It really is, and it's a part of the response. And I'll kind of jump topic a little outside of
Hmm.
the IVRs for the SDRs you're talking about. If you think through, let's take the music business.
Hmm.
The music business has these tools like Suno, these music generation tools, just like these video
Of
generators,
course.
and they're almost too perfect. They follow all the rules of rhythm. They follow all the chord progressions for a certain style. They put it in the minor key when it needs to be in a minor key. They can create a pitch perfect vocal. They can create a AI generated bass line. And you can't from a formula really deduce and go, well, that's very produced. That's very polished, but it lacks, for lack of a better word, soul. And
Right.
so to create that, and to your point about the SDRs, to create that in a voice response system, and if it's almost too perfect, humans are incredibly, incredibly perceptive. That's why I say this uncanny valley is going to exist unless you can really recreate a human mannerism down to almost the follicle level, which many are trying. Um, um, you're never going to pass we'll call it the Turing test in the visual world. The old Turing test. Can you tell the difference between the AI and the real human? And eventually we'll be able to pass the Turing test. But even when we do that, to your point about the SDRs and all, even if you could convince someone verbally that they may or may not be talking to a live human, that
Hmm.
immediately, in my mind and in my belief, that immediately creates a potential for distrust. Meaning, wait, now I can make Donald Trump say whatever I want. I can make Bill Clinton
Hmm.
do whatever I want. And now that's going to do nothing but raise a mistrust with you, your employees, your customers. So I would rather be very, very upfront. And here's a good anecdote. Very, very
Hmm.
upfront with our characters. We have a character we call Daphne. She's kind of our spokesmodel. And
Hmm.
Daphne has a little bit of a Hispanic flair, but almost a cultural anonymity to her. So we can have her speak different languages and such. So bottom line is she's an animated character.
Hmm.
And she has more of this Disney Pixar feel to her. So we were at a trade show, and she's very, very obvious not a real human.
Hmm.
But she talks, she converses very fluently, and people were talking to him. They were impressed with her. And some people would say, "Why doesn't she look more realistic?" And I'd have to go through this whole pitch. However, one person was coming up the stairs to meet us, and they skipped a little, and they bumped into Daphne.
Hmm.
Now it's very clear she's an animated character. Now, if I bumped into your cell phone and knocked it off of your trade show booth, and
Hmm.
I would lean down and pick up your iPhone and I would hand it to you and say, Christian, I'm so sorry. I bumped your phone off. I hope I didn't
Hmm.
crack the screen. They didn't do that. They didn't bump into her and then turn to me and apologize. What do you think they did? They turned to Daphne and went, "Oh, I'm sorry." And they stabilized her, and they're looking right at this animated character. So the point is that they still believe there's an intelligence and a sentience behind that. In the gaming world, we
Hmm.
call it the suspension of disbelief, which means you're in a set and you're in a game environment. And if I'm in Tomb Raider, we bring Tomb Raider up again, or whatever
Hmm.
game, let's call it Madden football. You're playing football, and we need to make sure we have the right fonts and all. If you were to see something out of place, let's say you're playing Tomb Raider and you're in an old temple, and all of a sudden
Hmm.
that old temple has the quintessential Starbucks coffee cup in the corner, it's going to take you out of that reality.
Right.
So it's going to break you out of that reality. So that's what happens when you're conversing with hyper-realistic characters. They might get it right 95% of the time. They might, right now, they're probably about 70 or 80%. But let's say we even get to that 98%. Those IVRs are
Mhm.
there. As soon as you divulge that this is an AI and you create that suspension of that belief that they're talking to a sentient being, and you've been trying to fool them into a human, I'm going to use that word trust again, because whether
Right.
you're a commercial brand, whether you're trying to keep your employees at your a business, you can't break trust with whoever your users are. And
100%.
as soon as you break trust, you've broken the entire benefit of why you're trying to break down that communication pipeline.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's why I was asking you, just in the relation to sales, like I've done sales for a long time. We've obviously E.N.G is a marketing company. That
Hmm.
trust is so important, especially in a sales cycle, or especially like you're saying in a video game. Across the board, any communication, trust is the factor. Like, for example, you hop on the podcast, you at least trust me a little bit to mediate the
Absolutely.
podcast and not like ask ridiculous questions, right? And I trust you to give reasonable answers, right? It
Yep.
goes both ways. Now, is that the same trust I trust my wife with or my mom with, right? No, it's very different, but there's still that baseline trust level, right? So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that becomes almost critical in the healthcare sector.
mhm,
We do a lot of work with clinical trials as well. And when you're trying to, and this is a real trial going on right now. It's called the OBO study. It's done by RTI, one of our clients. And the ideal is to try to look at the impact of children that are born to typically younger female underserved communities where they might, for whatever reason, have gotten addicted to opioids. So, what
mhm,
is an opioid addicted mother's impact on the unborn child? And what's going to happen after that child's born? That's a pretty that's a pretty serious issue, especially
of
in the
course.
US now. You know, we have an opioid addiction going on. And they need to get consent. They need to get the pharmaceuticals need to get consent. They need to say, hey, I'm trying to go to this um, community, this demographic that really has a mistrust of the healthcare system anyway. You hate to admit it, but there's a big mistrust in the healthcare system, especially in underserved communities, very underrepresented. So if you're taking, and I hope it's not too politically incorrect, let's say I take a 16-year-old Hispanic female that got
Mhm,
addicted to opioids for whatever reason, and she had a kid out of wedlock, and you're sitting there trying to ask her personal questions. You know, how many sexual partners have you had? How many of this? Where did you get your opioids? What did you do here? How many
mhm.
times do you take opioids? You know, how are these painkillers? How did you get addicted to the painkillers? Blah, blah, blah. These are very sensitive and personal questions. Look at this face. You know, I'm a
Right.
59-year-old gray-haired conservative male that's got a cowboy picture in my back of my screen. You really think that girl's going to want to talk? You really think she's going to divulge to me that type of personal information? So we use the avatars. We'll create a slightly authoritative figure, maybe a 28-year-old Hispanic or a 32-year-old Hispanic female. We'll speak to her in Spanish or whatever her native tongue would be, her native language. We would use culturally sensitive phraseology, and we create an empathetic appeal and say, hey, you know, everybody has challenges in their life. We don't know. And we're finding that there's even some interesting studies where the information that a human will divulge to an avatar like that, when you look at the actual biological data, the outcome data, the actual
Mhm,
medical data behind it, you're finding very clearly, and not just, ooh, it's a little bit high. No, I'm talking a large gap. That information is more accurate when they're talking to the avatar. There's no stigma, there's no judgment going on. There's a relatability to the demographic. So you take the power of that in the healthcare sector and you apply it to wherever, commercial sector. How do
100%.
you create brand trust? You know, Disney's probably got one of the most trusted brands in the world. How do they create that trust with their patrons? You know, Disney has a very consistent brand. You take employees. How do your employees trust that the benefits I'm getting I can utilize all the time? We use these for HR plays quite often.
Mhm.
I know it keeps going back to trust, but that really is kind of the ethical use of AI. Is how do you create AI that people can get the benefit from, but they trust and they don't feel like they're being misled. They don't feel like this AI is out to take their job. The goal is really not to have AI replace people. The goal there is to have AI augment your staff and to be able to create a communication pipe between whatever that end user is and the back end technologies that scale so nicely. So this is a way to scale technology without having humans change their behavior. And we're not going to change our behavior. We've had millions of years where we've ingrained how we communicate into our very being at the genetic level. We're not going to change that, so stop trying.
Right, 100%. And thank you so much for sharing. I think that's a perfect example. And you actually almost answered my next question that I have on here, but I'm going to ask it anyways to see if there's maybe some other answers on that and you could elaborate. But I know that you've had some recent partnerships in the healthcare space with PatientWorks and Humanate Digital this year, I believe. And
Yep.
how are you seeing AI avatars like the iHealth Assist actually change the patient experience? I know you just talked about it a little bit. Like, are hospitals viewing this as a nice to have or a real solution to staffing, accessibility, and operational challenges as a whole?
Myself in trouble, and I won't divulge my clients too much.
Okay.
I think it's becoming a must-have, but I'm slightly surprised on the pace at which innovation and adoption is happening in the healthcare space. And I'm not saying that selfishly, like, oh, my product's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I don't know why people aren't buying it. No, I'm a cancer survivor, late stage cancer survivor myself. My wife's a two-time cancer survivor. We go to MD Anderson every year. I'm through the healthcare system, and the amount of friction it takes to navigate a complex health system in the U.S., especially at big places like Houston, where you have, big campuses of multiple
Mhm.
buildings. You're going through processes and you're seeing, there's 10,000 patients a day going through these facilities. It's really surprising to me that they haven't taken a stronger stance on looking at AI technologies as more like staff productivity and staff augmentation. Now, specific examples you were asking about are multitude, one of which is, like we mentioned, in the consent world for clinical
Mhm.
trial. How do we reach underserved communities? How do we target and create empathetic, trusting, approachable communication pipelines for underserved communities in clinical trials? We're a approved vendor in NHS. We have multiple installs in London and a couple other trials coming online where they're used to help patients navigate the complexities of large healthcare environments like Princess Alexandria Hospital, some other local domestic hospitals, some other hospitals
Mhm.
we're looking at. So when a patient walks into a hospital, typically, there's always staffing restrictions. Every healthcare system is understaffed, overburdened, overworked, blah, blah, blah. Lots of training, lots of recurrent training going on. So these characters will engage with the patients and they can ask simple stuff like, how much is parking? Is there a local hotel? Hey, I'm supposed to give blood work. Where do I go?
Mhm.
And our avatars are able to answer those types of questions. And I'm kind of bringing that up because there's a hidden value in that as well. Not only is that a great use case on how people who are navigating, whether they're 75-year-old or 85-year-old individuals who probably don't even haven't grown up with technology like we have, how do you
Mhm.
can't just say download our mobile app and play with it. You walk through the
Right.
door, you see our 6 foot tall avatar with a nice shirt on and going, hey, welcome to the hospital. How can I help you? Not
Mhm.
touch the screen, not swipe left, not pull up your phone, don't download this app, don't connect to the internet. You walk in, you've got this representative of the hospital that's clearly branded as a hospital concierge and says, how can I help you? And here's where the hidden value comes in, Christian. It's
Mhm.
not just, hey, if you want to go to the men's restroom, push on the men's restroom. If you want to get to the cardiology or imaging lab, find the imaging lab in your list of menu items. That's not a great experience.
Right.
They'll say, how can you help you? And she'll go, well, I was told I need an MRI. Oh, well, you need to go to the imaging lab. Here's how you get to the imaging lab. So that level of concierge service is a hidden gem that we're getting a fair amount of activity. Like I said, adoption's slower than I expected, but we are getting activity. The hidden value I keep alluding to, I'll drop the punchline here, is that now you're not saying, here, pick A, B, or C. Now I'm saying, Kristen, what do you need? What can I help you with? And it's
Mhm.
surprising to us because when she hears a question, if it's something we haven't heard, we literally had a unit up in Toronto and someone goes, well, I got 3 hours to my appointment. Where can I get it? Where can I get a good slice of pizza and beer around here? And you go, wait a
Mhm.
second. My patient experience team would have never thought about training your employees to say that. They might have their own
Right.
anecdotal, but you want vetted information. You need to create trusted information. You can't say, go around the corner and ask for Bob. You can't do that kind of
Right.
thing. You really got to give them some vetted information that's going to be trusted and that's vetted by the hospital and the patient experience team. So we were able to go to the experience team and say, okay, how do you want us to answer that? And they said, well, you know what? There's a food court around the corner, blah, blah, blah. So we were able then to train the avatar now to respond to that later. So when someone asks that question, the avatar goes, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that, or I can't help you. If you want me to try to find a live person, go out and look for a person in the purple shirt or whatever the case, however you want her to respond.
Yeah.
But he remembers that. So the insights that, and actually we did some work with Blue Cross Blue Shield, kind of the same use case. When people talk to that and they're asking about insurance, now you're finding out the insights of your users. What do you really want out of it? That instead of your marketing team or your experience team trying to guess on what people want, you're actually asking the people what you want. They don't have to go through surveys. They don't have to go through a whole list. They don't have to sit there and type stuff. What do you need? Oh, you know what I need right now? I need a pizza and a slice of beer before my 3 o'clock appointment.
That's
Or a
fair.
slice of pizza and a pint of beer. And okay, give them that now. You've got that. So that's the hidden value of user insights that I think a conversational technology really is overlooked right now, but can really bring to the table is that insight into what people really want.
100%. And like you said, I think it's this trust, like, oh, it's AI. Like I can basically say whatever to it, right? Like all it's gonna say is it doesn't have an answer. Even if I ask it something ridiculous, right? And it'll just say,
Exactly.
I don't have an answer for you, and I can move on. But knowing that that answer is sorted, and now the next time someone asks that, as long as it's a reasonable question, you can have a really good answer. People are gonna start to become surprised, right? Like this is awesome. Like I don't have to like waste someone else's time, or I don't feel like I'm getting in someone's way by asking this question, even though, and then maybe that too, like when you feel like you're asking a stupid question, right? Well, if I ask AI, no, I'm not asking a stupid question because it's not a human's time. I'm wasting, right? So, but,
And it's not wasting time. Like I said, it's
right,
giving insights into what people want, even if it seems ridiculous. And you put
right,
guardrails. The agentic AI, the conversational AI portion of it is going to have to be controlled like everything. And
right,
but
of
the beauty
course.
is there is we're putting that control in the hands of the companies that are utilizing and deploying these AIs. It's not just, hey, plug this on the front of Siri. This is no. We're using this as a domain expert. And how do you want us to answer for your specific use case? And a good example would be, let's take it at one of your enterprise customers and someone walks in the door and says, I have a 2:30 appointment with Christian. Okay, well, it's 1:45. Please have a seat and he can get there. Oh, well, wait. Where's the restroom? I need to use the restroom before I go to the waiting room. If you ask Siri that, what's Siri going to say? What
I
do you
don't
mean?
have
What,
an answer.
what restroom? I don't know what the hell you're talking about. But you're able
Right.
to train this as if it was a member of your staff. So you're literally,
hmm
the vetting of that information is only controlled by you and your domain expertise and what you want your brand to represent to your customers, users, employees, whatever they are. So that's kind of the big difference between all that you hear about Grok 4 and the LLMs out there, and they
hmm
can, create dissertations, my PhD level dissertations. No, at the end of the day, what people want in hospitals is, where can I get a cup of coffee? How do I get to the restroom? And how do I get to my appointment on time?
hmm
That's kind of what the kind of stuff you're doing. So that's where I think the value needs to be focused on.
That definitely makes a lot of sense. And I know since this is relatively a new category, I know that the technology has been out for a while, but what's been the most effective in driving adoption? I know you mentioned a little bit about it. It's a little bit slower than you want it to be overall in the space, but what has really been effective in driving that and continuing that forward so we get to that point?
I'm finding that certain industries are more receptive to the innovation and early adopting
hmm
of these types of technologies. And I'm finding there's such a financial and resource burden on, quite honestly, the groups that need it the most. If you think about healthcare, even financial
hmm
services, but let's stick to the human side of it a lot. I'm a big proponent on using this type of technology in our healthcare system, especially when it's helping patients directly.
Right.
But the hospitals, and no fault of their own, they're typically understaffed, overburdened. Our HCPs, our healthcare professionals, whether they're front desk receptionists, triage nurses, any staff member, and they're infinitesimally overstressed right now, and the operational budgets are typically saying, well, you know, we're trying to find money to keep our blah, blah, blahs going and our operational budgets. And people are still looking at this as a nicety, an unproven technology. We don't have the budget to try anything new. So we're trying to be as open and conservative and aggressive, not conservative, aggressive in creating. We have a pilot program that's incredibly cost effective. We say, okay, let us put it in there. Let us do a pilot for you, and let's work at a operational budget that's very limited, knowing that if we can show that value, we'll adopt it later. That's been helpful a little bit there. But the short answer, I guess, and I apologize, I know I get long-winded on a lot of these, is that there seems to be other priorities, and this is still looked at as, hey, let's wait and see what really happens in this space. And everybody wants to be different, but nobody wants to be first to dip their toe in the water. And so they always go, well, this sounds really cool, but where else have you done it? Well, if you want to be first in your area, we haven't done it in your area yet. You know, so it's breaking down the barrier of trying to convince them preemptively that the value's there. When you don't have a whole lot of use cases, you don't have a lot of people there. I'm not people there. You don't have a lot of proof points, and your clients are struggling with basic operational budgets and not.
Hmm.
Hey, I think part of that argument, part of that debate could go into asking enterprise clients, whatever industry they're in. We've done a fair amount in the financial services as well, to look at it as going, okay, well, wait a second. If you think about it as staff augmentation, as a member of your team, if you say, hey, our branches are growing and we need to hire more uh, um, um, loan officers, or we need to hire more front end reception, just front end receptionists to direct them to loan officers, whatever the case is.
Hmm.
And they start looking at these avatars as not back in AI tech. Am I spending money on new LLMs, blah, blah, blah. If they really start looking at them as staff, this is a staff
Hmm.
augmentation value. This is another member of your team that has almost an infinite memory, that can train and that can scale. You train one employee and you deploy 20 kiosks or 200 or 2,000 kiosks, and the training you gave that first employee is now scaled across your 20,000 employees across the whole country. If they start looking at it in that light and go, oh, the light bulb just went in, so I can train one employee. I can teach one employee to respond to my customers, my employees, my users' needs, and now that becomes a infinitely scalable staff member, then I think the value proposition the light bulb might go on, and they start thinking through and go, now I get it. Now I get it. I don't have to do that. And if I need to retrain, I retrain one person, and the training propagates through. So if they start thinking of it in that scalability, I hope that that it changes the value proposition out there.
Definitely. I mean, the light bulb, I already, from our conversation today, I mean, that popped in my head in the sense of like you don't ever have to put an employee on PIP, right? The expenses that go into doing training, right? Like that, depending on what it is, like a loan officer, that training might be 3 months, right? Like,
Yep.
or longer, depending on the licenses that they need, or even a front desk receptionist. Like, if I only train them once, then all of the money that I would have spent that 3 month period of just paying for training is now eliminated, right? Now it's all right. I just got to buy a new kiosk, and that's it, and then I'm done. And it
Yep.
sits there and for as long as it is, and if I need to update it or update the content, it's easy. I train one and the rest of 20,000 or however many there are continue to work on. But going into some of my last question, what's coming next for PRSONAS in the next 6 to 12 months? Are there any big product launches, feature updates, or strategic initiatives you're excited about?
Bunches of them, all of the above. We have some international investment going on. We have some pilot programs going on in multiple countries now, which is pretty exciting for us. For a little North Carolina-based company to get that type of world stage has been pretty exciting. But I think it really proves that AI. Some people say there's a hype around AI. I'm overhyped. I tend to be one of those people that think AI is being underhyped, quite honestly. So the scalability is coming out there. We're doing multiple use cases. Our strategy shifted a little. When the early days, we had to do a lot of direct development with the end user use cases. So our big recent change has been to make our API and SDKs publicly available through registered, you have to be a registered development partner. So basically, instead of us saying like, hey, we're going to be a wayfinding company and create a wayfinding solution, we're going to be
Hmm.
a clinical trial management software company, and we're going to go into a CTMS tool. We're going to create a visitor management system. So we've basically taken all the technology stacks we've developed and think of it as a avatar UX layer. And we've now been releasing, I think we're on our 33rd release in about the last 9 or 10 months. But over the last 8 or 9 months,
Wow.
we've shifted our focus from building the end solutions for every client and being that professional services group out to the scalable productization of this technology stack. So now if you're a developer, and if any of your audience members are developers, check us out. You can register with us and we go give you some sample applications and say, okay, now you're the expert in HR. You're the expert in whatever the use case might be, patient discharge. You're the expert in after hours automobile drop off
Hmm.
lockers. You're the expert in Amazon shipping, whatever your domain expertise is. You no longer have to be a AI avatar and AI company. You can work with us, and our SDKs pretty compatible with about any enterprise developer. So now we can be that AI avatar layer on top of the infinitesimal number of enterprise solutions and agentic AI companies. And at the core level, like a chatbot company can say, hey, we got the best chatbot focusing on insurance claims in the business or whatever it is, or patient discharges, another use case we really like. And they no longer have to be AI experts. We no longer have to be patient discharge experts. We can now get together and do that integration. And we really think it's going to change the way any user, whether it's an employee, customer, patient, uses enterprise software is going to be changed. So that's a pretty exciting strategic shift for us, is to
Hmm.
focus on the enterprise development community as heavily as we focused on the end solution company.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And that's very much more scalable than taking a holistic approach to every single one, right? But to wrap up, this is my last question. It's a fun one, but a tough one. Hypothetically, if you had a magic wand and could solve just one problem within the business, what would that be?
One problem within the market we're targeting or within my own business?
Within your own business.
Ah, it's this isn't even a tongue-in-cheek joke. This is more serious than people think. I'm pretty damn good at what I do, I think. But I'm an innovation guy. I've been a gamer. I've been, even in my military games, military world, I was doing, military simulation work, and then I was doing all these sports games and all. I'm good at certain things. I've been at the CEO role for way too long, and I'm not the best CEO in the world. I don't have an MBA. I didn't go to business school. If I could change one thing, I would have brought in and attracted a CEO probably 10 years ago, because I think if we had, um, we'd be in a little different position than we are now. So it's me focusing more on the technology stack. It's fun for me. It's
Hmm.
great. It's very, very rewarding to wake up in the morning and be able to go in and start developing digital personalities and to
Hmm.
say, hey, our characters sitting there talking to people. People are always jaw dropping and enamored. We use Daphne to do some of our marketing. We talk to Daphne as if she's one of our staff members, and
Hmm.
it's always been fun. But I tend to be hyper focused on the technology stack, and I think we're about due to say what I would change is I would be a little more balanced in my desire to be just the funnest, coolest technology around versus finding those business use cases that would have taken us to a different level earlier.
Of course. And I think that's a great answer. But if people want to connect with you, Chuck, or learn more about what Personas is doing, where could they go and how can they connect?
Okay, this is going to be the fun question because I get this
Okay.
times, and every time I've done podcast, this is half joking but half serious. I typically get 1,000,001 inquiries going, "Hey, I saw you on this podcast. Do you want to buy IT professional services from us? Can we help with your marketing efforts? Can we do this?" I prefer connectivity through LinkedIn. I stay
Okay.
active on LinkedIn. When people go into my profile on the LinkedIn, look for, personas, Chuck Rinker, Charles Rinker under personas, and connect through there. I feel that that's a little more governed and professional. That's probably the easiest way if you want to connect with me directly, like you're an enterprise partner. You think that there's a way that we could collaborate. I can bring value to you. You can bring value to us. I prefer not to give out my personal email because I do
Of
get a lot of
course.
phone numbers. Um, the other way that I really, really like is to have people either invite me to roundtables. I've done a lot of talks. I go to conferences. I speak sometimes. I've spoken a lot of schools for like graduating people who are graduating in technology realms or animator realms. So I like to be involved in the market, in the industry, at that level of helping be a proponent of this technology and the ethical use of this technology. So those types of engagements are very, very much welcome. The easiest, of course, the easy answer is just give our website, www.personas.com, spelled a little odd, just PRSONAS. Um, um, so that's a trivia question I'll ask you. Do you happen to know, well, I'm going to put you on the spot, researching personas, where the personas name actually comes from?
I do not. I did do research, but I didn't dive that deep, if I'm being completely frank with you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the honesty. No, it's actually fun, and it's really not the full derivative. But the reason I came up with it is we're sitting there going, this personality, these digital personalities, I can train them to be anybody or
Hmm.
anything. And evidently, at least to my knowledge, and your audience members can take this and write me an email and tell me I don't know what the hell I'm talking about because it might be true. But I believed the story that back in Shakespearean days, there was limited number of actors. So an actor or an actress that was doing a role on stage would have to play multiple roles. In Act One, they were this character, and then there were a
Hmm.
background character here, like in a course. So there was one person serving. And the term that they used back then was, well, you're going to be multiple personas on this big stage. So to me, it's creating the digital personalities that can serve to as different roles and different personas as on the world stage is really where the name came from.
That's awesome. And I can back you. I know that's true. I know that's
Okay.
true because I did do
Okay.
playwriting in school. So I do know that
Really?
you are correct in this. So
Oh, good, good. I
if
feel
anyone
better.
wants to send
Been
you an
validated.
email, I'll back you.
I've been
But
validated.
yes, exactly. But I will leave the link to Chuck's LinkedIn in the description as well as the website for Personas. But I highly recommend you check out Personas and the incredible things they're doing in the space. Even if you go to the website and you aren't going to be a customer, it's still pretty cool to see it and watch the demos. I watched a couple of them. But other than that, thank you again for your time and insights today, Chuck. And we will see you guys on the next podcast.